fantasy, horror, young adult, and much, much more. Today, we're going to be digging into stories from members of the community. I'm going to be doing a live reading and a live critique. And I encourage you to come join along in the fun, join along in the discussion, and let's help each other improve our stories. If you are wanting a free story reading and a live critique, make sure to send an email to the ticker down on the ticker on the bottom of the screen to Kaufman at the-creative-ghost.com, and I will get your story queued up for the submissions. Welcome to the Story and Critique Show. Today is episode 24. I'm your host, Kaufman. This is my daily writing live stream. It's part of the Right Now community where we do all types of writing craziness, from writing sprints, writing streams, guest conversations, story readings, and much, much more. Welcome to the stream, and we're going to be hopping right into it. Now, if you're watching on the replay, I got you covered. When the stream ends, time codes get added to the part of the stream. So that way you can hop to the part that brings you the most value. Whether you want to listen to a story again and again because it's so awesome, or if you got a critique and you want to listen to the feedback I gave. All right, beautiful. And once again, back by popular demand, the comment of the day game. Woo! So the comment of the day game is a fun thing that I've been doing for the past. There we go. So the day game is a fun thing we've been doing for the past, give or take, month or so. Essentially, I encourage you to come participate in the conversation, drop comments, and just be involved. At the end of the stream, I'm going to pick the top 3 comments that stand out, and I judge it based on 3 things: cleverness, comedic value, or helpfulness to other writers. So whether it falls into one of those categories, cleverness, comedy, or helpfulness, all comments are game. So keep your comments coming, whether it's commenting about a community discussion, a story, or anything else. Come be a part of the conversation. All right, beautiful. So we got that. Now, let me just hop in. ML, welcome to the stream, my friend. Glad to have you here. Remy, welcome, welcome. Happy Saturday. I have been making such great progress with Last Scarecrow this week. I know some of you have been as well, and I'm excited to hop into all your stories. Hey, what's up, Mike? Welcome to the stream, my friend. And beautiful. So, just a few housekeeping rules before we begin. When you submit a story, I accept all genres. I accept all different types of genres. They're all listed by the title, the genre, and the pen name. If you want to submit your story for today's reading, send it to the email below, Kaufman at the-creative-ghost.com. I'll add it to the submissions. If we have enough time, I get through as many as I possibly can. Each story submission receives 20 minutes. Sometimes I go a little over, but I really try to be fair to everyone. 10 minutes for a reading, 10 minutes for a critique. So that way we can be as fair as possible. I'll throw my timer up and all that. And you can see I already have the story set up here. So there's that. And then if I am highlighting your story while I'm going, it means neither good nor bad things. It's just a way for me to keep track of notes, so that way when I do the critique, I know parts that I can go back to. And most importantly, during the critique, come be involved, come be part of the conversation. Whether there's a part of the story that you liked, drop a comment. If there's something you liked, say why you liked it. If there's something you're like, that didn't sound right, or you have a better suggestion for it, definitely critique and leave your thoughts. All feedback is welcome. My theory, as long as we are kind in the way we communicate information, all insight and all ideas are generated to help us improve our stories, because we all want to get our stories published, all want to get our stories out there. And so you can see how I critique stories. I base story development off of these guidelines here on the right. I am looking at character development, world building, dialogue, plot, or structure/grammar. I don't focus too much on grammar on these things, but these are the 5 main elements that I look for as I'm reading the story. All right, perfect. And I am all set. I'm super stoked to get into this. We're going to be hopping straight into the first story, into reading number one, Lyra Rogers and the Black King. So this is a creepypasta fan fiction by the Desolate Reader. So Desolate, I know I see you in here all the time. Just let me know if you're here in the stream, or I'll probably see you in a bit. Okay, so as we're looking into fan fiction, we've it's interesting, as with previous story submissions, fan fiction is a great avenue for new writers and for writers who want to practice in a world where they don't have to worry about the world building rules. They get to just practice telling a succinct story with maybe characters or a single plot line. I think fan fiction is awesome. I always make this note before doing fan fiction. If I'm not too familiar with the world, I may not be able to give as good feedback based on the universe. Now, looking into creepypasta is an online it's like an online like horror type story vibe community. So I think I should be good on this. I generally enjoy doing horror. So come join me. Let me know what you think of this. Hey, by the way, Mary, welcome, my friend. Okay. So I am all ready, and let's get into it. So I got 20 minutes on the clock. And let me throw up is that the banner. Okay. So let's get started. Lyra Rogers and the Black King, Chapter 1. Pain. That's the first thing I felt. Pain. I couldn't tell you where I felt it. I just felt pain. But do you know what the worst pain is? The kind of pain that makes you want to die. Losing him. Losing my only brother, Toby. I remembered looking to my right, seeing my brother's bloodied, twisted corpse. I remembered screaming so loud. I tried to get out of the door, but I realized that my left arm was broken. The pain in my arm intensified as I looked at it. The next thing I remembered is lying on a hospital bed. Blurry figures of the hospital staff and my mom coming into the room flashed in my memory. One day, when a nurse came to clean my bandages, I asked her if my father came to see me. It's stupid, I know, but I thought the asshole would at least have some sort of humanity. I was wrong. The nurse looked at me. She looked confused. She then told me she didn't know I even had a father. I was discharged from the hospital after 3 weeks. The car ride home was silent. My mother drove through our little neighborhood. The trees seemed to dance as we passed by them. I swear I saw a tall man in a suit next to the trees. I looked back and saw nothing. It must have been my imagination. Huh. We pulled into our driveway. My father sat on the front porch, a bottle of whiskey in his hand. He didn't even bother coming to the hospital, but the thought of him leaving his dear alcohol behind horrified him. As my mother and I got out of the car, my father got up and walked over to us. He had a smile on his face. I wanted to wipe it off his face. He walked over to my mother and tried to hug her. My mother easily dodged his advances. I walked into the house, not listening to my mother's and father's bickering. It wouldn't be the first time I ignored them. I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. I walked up the stairs and went into my room. I plopped on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I couldn't think about sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see him, my brother's corpse. Tears welled in my eyes, and I cried. I hadn't realized I cried myself to sleep. I woke up in a clearing. The dark grass tickled my cheek. I got up and noticed that the trees were dark, and so were the leaves. Gray skies darkened the forest. The gold wind blew through my hair and shook the trees. I looked ahead. A tall figure stood motionless. Dark black tendrils escaped from its back. It came towards me, and I screamed. I turned and ran. As I dodged the tendrils, I heard it speak to me. Lyra. It said my name. Why does it know my name? I ran some more until I smacked face first into someone. I looked up. A woman in a white hoodie and a white mask stared at me. I screamed and I got up. I tried to run, but she grabbed me. The tall man walked in front of me. He stared at me and raised his hand. He stroked my cheek as if he was stroking a child. Lyra, my child, I missed you. Missed me? I asked. Yes, my beautiful creation. I looked up at him. I have never been so confused. How was I created? I shook my head. This is a dream. This is real. No, it, it wasn't. You're not real, I said. The creature looked at me. He seemed confused. He tilted his head. Of course, I'm real, Lyra. Then who are you? I'm the Black King, and you're the Black Queen. What? It's time for you to wake up. No, I have more questions. All in due time, my dear. All in due time. And reading. Wonderful. What a great little start to the story. First off, really, really I think that was a really interesting opening to a horror story. Now, while I'm not as familiar with the creepy pasta with the community, from a pure horror story, this was very intriguing. Let me see. Yeah, I completely agree. I was all down for the story. I feel like it was just a really good start to kind of like a horror like supernatural-esque story. And like first off, I always like the name Lyra. I think it's a great name. And the Black King, the title within itself makes you think that the story they're basically you're using the plot to pull the reader in with whatever this conflict might be. Now, I think things that really stood out to me was I think you did a really good job on setting up the backstory of our main character of Lyra, right? So we obviously she's coming in from the death of her brother, dysfunctional family. Clearly, her parents are not the vibe, and clearly there's alcoholism, and then we have some type of dream scenario. It's like it might be a dream. I hadn't realized I'd cried myself to sleep. So this is all dreams. So right now we're uncertain whether the creature and because it's called a creature. So we're uncertain what the creature is other than the Black King. And I think referring to her as the Black Queen is a really good build up. So let me dig into it line by line. I think the things that worked really well, the world building was really intriguing. Now, of course, we're a little early on in the story to really determine if the world building itself was truly effective. But so far from what I'm reading, the world building is fun. The plot, can't speak too much on plot yet, other than that it's intriguing. I like the initial character development. I actually think right now character development is the biggest opportunity in terms of using description to make some of these moments just a little bit more like a little more impactful. So let's hop straight to the top. Yep, exactly. Great start. Definitely makes you want to hear more. Reminds me of the books by Philip Pullman. Oh, you know what, Pullman? The Pullman sounds familiar. Which books are Philip Pullman again? Um, Dark Material. Yep, that's what I thought because Dark Materials is the main character is Lyra. Okay, yeah. So like you said, Philip Pullman. I'm pretty sure Philip Pullman is Golden Compass, and the main character of Golden Compass is Lyra. Forgetting her last name. I read the books and the show. Great stuff. Awesome. So as we hop into it from the beginning, first off, got indent there. That's just me. Let's see. So I like that you're starting off with pain. I think the first paragraph resonates with this core theme of pain, and it's interesting. Any person alive can resonate with pain, right? So this is a really great start. The kind of pain that makes you want to die. So we have a character who's in a very dark place because they lost their brother, Toby. Now, we don't really get too much about how the brother died quite yet. My guess is that's probably explored throughout the story. But I think what's interesting is we have this visual of, I remember looking to my right, seeing my brother's bloodied, twisting corpse. Now, something that we want to add at this part, which could be more impactful, is I would want to have a little bit more description of what the brother's bloody twisting corpse looked like, or elements of the twisting corpse that stood out. Because since this is a horror story, I'm assuming this is going in the horror category. We want to basically elevate that kind of like grotesque vibe that we're going for in this. Let me pull up my keyboard. So what we would want to do is I would do something like, I remember looking to my right, seeing my brother's bloody twisting corpse. His bloodshot graying, his bloodshot bluish bluish gray eyes, his bloodshot okay, actually better, I couldn't get the sight of his bloodshot bluish gray eyes staring, his bloodshot bluish gray eyes. I couldn't get the sight of his bloodshot bluish graying eyes out of my mind. I know there's probably a better way to word that, but this is just as an example. I couldn't get the sight of his bloodshot bluish gray eyes out of my mind. The way his blood ran down his neck, or it sounds like he might have ran down his neck, leading to that disfigured ... What a great, and this is just one way to go about it. But what you want to do is we just want to get a little bit more description. Now, of course, like brother's bloody twisted corpse, like that works. But I think by giving a specific image of the reader, of what you want the reader to imagine, so they're going to think of a bloody twisting corpse, but now like I want them to think of like the bloodshot eyes, right? And like that's a little bit more vivid. So now every single time they think of that creates more of an image and more of a visualization. That's kind of like a little bit more on the grotesque side. Now, with something like this, you could go into as much detail or as little detail as you want. But I think with what you're trying to accomplish, I think focusing on one element will really make it stand out. And then you could always reference back to the element later in the story. And I mean, when we think about death, I think we would probably think about elements, or maybe portions of maybe the body or portions of the corpse that might stand out to us. We see that a lot in horror stories. Awesome. So I remember screaming so loud, I tried to get out of the door, but this is good. And then I would do that on a new paragraph. I remembered screaming so loud, I tried to get out of the door, but I realized that my left arm was broken. The pain in my arm intensified as I looked at it. Ooh, that is right. And this, we get more character development. That's interesting. So this now makes us question like, okay, so how did she break the left arm? I love that. I think that's really, really good. The pain intensified in my arm as I looked at it. Interesting. So she's the type of character where she's out of sight, out of mind. She can focus on other things, but then the moment she's like looking at it, it's made worse. By the way, what's up, Penelope? Welcome to the stream. And let's see. The next thing I remembered is lying on a hospital bed. So we got that. This is all good. This father stuff is all good. It goes to show the absent father figure. Let's see. And then we're going back through here. My father sat. And I think if I was to add upon this, I might try to add some type of like foreshadowing or maybe like horror element. Like even in like their drive home, like the trees, my mother drove through a little neighborhood. The trees seemed to dance as we passed by them. I swear I saw a tall man. Oh, that's right. Okay, cool. You did have this. I swear I saw a tall man in a suit next to the trees. I love that. I absolutely love that. This is the foreshadowing that I wanted. Perfect. I was like, actually, I think I did see a foreshadowing thing there. I looked back and saw nothing. This is such a horror movie thing that happens. Absolutely love that. I think the only thing I would add was like, did she hear anything? I always like to think of the other senses. I swear I saw, I heard I heard a scratching. I heard a tree. I heard the scratching of a tree, and I turned my head. I swear I saw a tall man in a suit next to the trees. Right? So gives us another of the senses, helps pull the reader in even more, which is awesome. And then we get to go back to the father. Yep, alcoholic. Mother is kind of seems like a pushover. And they're bickering inside. So right now, it's not super clear where the disconnect is with the parent characters. And it's hard to say yet if the father is actually an evil character, like abusive, or if he's just absent, or what it is. We don't have enough information yet, but we do know there's some type of disconnect, which is interesting. Let's see. He walked over. Yep. Every time I close my eyes, I see my brother's corpse. I love that. I popped on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I couldn't think about sleep. He walked over. So I walked up the stairs and went into my room. Something I might want just a little bit with the room, so we can get a vibe, is what's the character's room like? Even if I walked up the stairs and went to my room, the the poster of so and so greeted me. Or I ignored the poster of so and so as I couldn't get the memory of my brother's corpse out of my mind. I think any little things, because I think that would add to the darkness, right? My guess is I get this kind of maybe a gothic, maybe like a dark type feel. It could be a very plain room, and that could add to the ambiance of this of the vibe we're going for. We go back to the brother, tears over my eyes, and I didn't realize I'd cried myself to sleep. This is good. That's good. Love it. Then we get to go. I love dream sequences. I love dream sequences. So I think this is all fun. I looked at a tall figure stood motionless. Dark black tendrils escaped from its back. I love that. We get kind of a nightmare. So it's a tall figure with dark black tendrils that are coming out of its back. Makes us think that, okay, it was probably the guy who she thought she saw earlier. I ran some more. I absolutely love this conversation. So I think all this dialogue here is actually very effective. I wouldn't actually change any of this dialogue at all. I think the dialogue works. But I think what needs to be added to this is we need a little bit more action in between the dialogue. So that way we can just continue to get a sense of like, okay, so we had the tall man with the tendril shoot towards her. Did it actually grab her? Let's see. Escape from its back. Okay, so she dodged the tendrils and then it walks towards her. I screamed but she grabbed me. A woman. Okay, so I ran some more until I smacked. I looked up. A woman in a white hoodie and a white mask stared at me. I screamed and I got up. I tried to run, but she grabbed me. Okay, so there's two of them. I don't know why I missed, so that was on me. I think it's because the woman in the white mask isn't speaking. He stroked his cheek. Yeah, so I think I think some action that you could add in between these parts is what does it look like with Lyra's trying to like struggle with like the woman in the white mask is holding her, right? Lyra, my child, I missed you. He stroked my cheek as if he was stroking it. Lyra, my child, I missed you. His dark, enchanting features mesmerized me. I kind of get like this is like a dream, like mesmerizing vibe out of this. Or maybe he does something that's really horror. His dark enchanting features mesmerized me. As I mesmerized me. Missed me? I asked. Yes, my beautiful creation. I looked up. I've never been so confused. How was I created? I shook my head. This is a dream. This isn't real. No, it wasn't. You're not real, I said. I struggled. I struggled to escape. I struggled, but the arms or the grip of the woman in white tightened. The mask, the tip of the mask peeked over my shoulder, whispering inaudible whispering and inaudible expression into my to me. Something like that. That's just one idea. Um but essentially what we're doing is we want to just get a little bit more of the action of what's going on between this creature, the knight, what is he? The Black King. So that way it doesn't feel like you're just trying to tell us what's going on just between the dialogue. So awesome. And that, my friend, is all that I got for you. Um that was a very, very good little beginning of a story. I'd actually be really interested and really intrigued to read a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper. The questions that I'm asking myself now is, who is, obviously I want to know more about this creature, the Black King. I want to know, like, okay, so this dream sequence. So is he like, I mean, he showed up in the real world, so he must have abilities to be in the real world and the dream world. And why is she the Black Queen? We know that. We also want to know more about the brother's death. Like, that's interesting. There's also the obstacle between her and her family. So all of the obstacles that you've set up in the story, like, you've presented some great questions. From what we've seen so far, the plot has been very well done because you've done a lot of really good setup. I come out of this section with at least 5 to 10 different questions as a reader, which is exactly what you want. So really, really great work. And Desolate, thanks for submitting this. This was a cool little read. Definitely worth reading. All right, beautiful. So let's hop into what we have next. By the way, I saw LeMay, I saw you hop in during the reading. Welcome. I hope everyone here, I hope your Saturday, your weekend's going pretty smoothly. That was a great start. I always love starting with horror. Horror and thrillers and mysteries are always so much fun. I love digging into horror and thrillers. All right, perfect. So with that one out of the way, let's see, who do I got queued up next? We're going to be doing reading number 2. So Mike Edwards, I got Shadows of the Dreamwalker is queued up next. Shadows of the Dreamwalker. Excellent. So we got that one queued up. We're going to be digging into some fantasy. And Mike, I know you're here. So we're going to be hopping into that in just a second. And just as a reminder, if you're wanting feedback for your story, send an email to kaufman@the-creative-ghost.com. Perfect. And we're going to be hopping right into that. Let me just make sure that I haven't gotten any emails. So as I'm setting this up, I'm just curious, how's the weekend treating all y'all? All right, wonderful. So it looks like I am good with where I'm at, and emails are fine. Perfect. And it looks like I saw a couple more come in as well. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It started perfect. Katana, I saw yours come in as well, my friend. I saw you hop into the stream a little earlier. What was it? I saw you hop in, so I definitely got your critique as well, or your story as well. Thanks for sending that over. I know, right? That was like a we got some good titles today. We got some great stories. I feel like every single story and critique show is always like a different vibe in terms of the types of stories that get submitted. Um, and let's see, I know I was talking to Mike for the next story, Shadows of the Dreamwalker. I'm like, what a great title. First off, it's a win for me because I already love dream theory. I love dream walking. Any type of dream, anything is a win for me personally. That's the type of story that I would read. But Shadows of the Dream Walker, which makes me think that the story is going to be about a type of dreamscape and how, like, and I think Mike mentioned shades. So I think we're going to be doing a lot of fantasy, like dark fantasy, possibly. So I'm definitely very intrigued. And by the way, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. we do daily writing live streams here. Let's see, we're on day 209 consecutive writing live streams. We got obviously the story and critique show. We got our daily Kaufman writes. We got story time segments, the Create Right Now podcast with guest writers. And it's all designed to help you become a better writer, help give you the motivation, and help you feel a little less isolated throughout the writing process. So if you're subscribed here on YouTube or following on the other platforms, you'll be alerted when I go live. And make sure if you're here on YouTube, you have the little bell notification clicked so you'll be alerted for every live stream. All right, perfecto, wonderful. So let me queue up Mike's story. This is one that I'm like definitely stoked to hop into. So I got that one. All right, so I am all set on my end. So I got the next story all queued up here. Let's see. Good weekend so far. Good, good. Glad everyone's having a decent weekend. Remy, still feeling sick, but hanging in there. Good time to rest and play video games. Woo, woo, woo. Actually, by the way, only because you called out video games, clearly I've been a gamer most of my life, but I'll show you guys something really interesting. So I'm curious, who here in the stream's a gamer right now? If you're a gamer at all, or you play any type of video games, just say I in the chat, or like what type of games you play. I recently did a poll on the Right Now YouTube channel about games, and I'll show you guys the results of it because I just thought it was super interesting. I'll do that real quick before I hop into it. So I did a little community poll for gaming. Let's see, because I was just kind of curious, like if how many writers in our community are like gamers, and clearly so far, and this is just based off 15 of you. So far, 15 is the we got console and PC gamers seems to be for the win, with some writing games, and we got one mobile gamer in here. So it's like clearly nobody's down for board games, or they just prefer console and PC games more so. I know I didn't have enough space to do all the above. John, I'm too old to be a gamer. You're never too old, my friend. You're never too old. Games work for everybody. But we definitely live in a generation where gaming culture is much more predominant. So definitely also make sure if you haven't voted yet, go over to the Right Now, go onto the Right Now, the channel under the community tab, and post your vote. I was just very intrigued by this. I'm like, cool. So I do have a lot of PC and console gamers. BG3. Baldur's Gate was a very, very popular game. Oh my goodness. I didn't have time to play Baldur's Gate. Unfortunately, I've been stuck on Diablo last year, because it was just low effort. I didn't have that much time to start a new game. Hey, what's up, Eli? We're just chatting about gaming, taking a quick little break in between writing. Let's see, Dragon Age and other RPGs and survival crafting. Dragon Age is a fun game for sure. Tabletop, woo woo! And I've always loved tabletop gaming. I'm like, if only I had a board game group one of these days. D&D is fun. I've actually never played D&D before, but and I think not of a lack of willingness. I think it's more just I've never had like a good group and really like the time to invest in putting like the D&D and understanding it and going through the process. Skyrim's an in-depth game. I totally get it. Like we're all like Baldur's Gate. We know Baldur's Gate is a great game. Yeah, I saw your comment earlier, my man. Absolutely. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've really been playing any cool games lately. I've just been playing old games, but like my time's so limited for gaming, so I don't actually get that much time. Let's see, I like Japanese RPGs, platformers, and mystery puzzle games. The only racing game I like is Mario Kart. I think we all like Mario Kart. I feel like anybody who's like any type of gamer can think back to like the OG Mario Kart days. Like, amen. Yeah, I told you the RPG games have always have a nice story. Yep. For me, I've always have to have a story in my games. If you like board games, check out Clank. Thanks for the suggestion. I'll definitely check it out. Love board games. Just never have the people to play the board games. My book is based on a D&D character. Woo! That's awesome. We're going to be hopping into Remy's story in just a little bit. But that's actually really cool. It's cool that there's some inspiration there. I played D&D once while I was in college. Yeah, and I think it's because of the role-playing element of it, right? And especially as writers, that's what's really fun. Um, One of the reasons I did the gaming poll is because at the end of August, we're actually going to be planning a gaming live stream. So the Right Now community, I'm going to be partnering with another writer in the community, and we're going to be doing the very first gaming writing live stream. So more details will be coming in a couple weeks, but we it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. We're asking ourselves, how do we do something that's gaming, but then how can we do it where you're still, if you're a writer, you're getting value out of it. So more to come, my friends, more to come. Okay, beautiful. So let me pull that back up as Kaufman goes on a tangent, on a video game tangent. All right, beautiful. So let me get back into it. Yeah, this is the thing I talked about. It is. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw with your comment with Skyrim. I was like so happy about that. I thought that was awesome. Um, Perfect. I wouldn't be. Yeah, Starfield. Sorry, Starfield. Such a letdown. Letdowns of the year, Starfield. Winning games of the year, Baldur's Gate. I think we all know that. Okay, so I am all set. Let's hop into this next one. We are going to be digging into Shadows of the Dreamwalker. And definitely, if there's something that stands out to you, definitely drop a comment about it. Let's see what we got. Let's see. Just making sure I didn't miss any comments. Okay, perfect. So I am already on my end. So we got 20 minutes on the clock. Shadows of the Dreamwalker. The sun shone brightly over a patchwork sky of blue and white. Bird songs echoed throughout the landscape, and the insects could be heard rustling in the bushes nearby. It was a hot day in the middle of summer, and the shimmer of heat could be seen in the distance, glancing off rocks and other structures. The field of green stretched far and wide in the Pegador Kingdom, known for its vibrant, grassy plains, humble beasts, and crystal clear waters. The kingdom itself was vast, stretching from the frozen wasteland of the northern tundra down to the scorched, burnt dunes of Milton. At its heart, the grand city of Enith stood, the main trading hub for Valea's markets. Traders would travel from far off lands to exchange exotic goods and services alike. Unlike most of Valea's cities, Enith had a strict policy on the trading of slaves, and anyone who was caught would be executed. A brutal punishment, but one found fitting by a member of the king's garrison, Endile Isare. Endile? Andil? and Dial Isare. He proposed the idea to King Euron when he was but a captain, thus earning his promotion to the rank of major. And Dial Isare had other ideas for the city, and it was his destiny to earn the rank of field marshal in the not too distant future. He was already the youngest soldier within the city guard to earn his rank and be put in charge of the Balchan garrison. He was tactful, cunning, and known to many as a mastermind when it came to warfare and other skills. People were jealous of him, of his ability to see things in a different light, from a different perspective. It is one reasons he climbed the ranks quicker than his peers. Comrades disliked him and spoke whispers behind his back, but they would not amount to much, nothing of significance in Undial's eyes, and for that, he didn't care. For Undial, training was important, and he wanted everyone in the garrison to be at their best. For he knew that if an attack from the elves came, his men would be ready to defend the city and win. When it came to training, Endial only wanted the best. He hired monks of the Shikan dynasty to train his men in martial arts, something that he had been trained in when he was a young boy. During his time as a good for nothing private, he would always better his opponents, and this is another reason his peers disliked him. It was rumored that Endial was once part of the elite group Blackmoor that conducted secret missions that were never sanctioned by the King's Council, but that all depended on who was telling the story or which tavern he visited in the city. His plans for today, though, were to be spending them with his wife, Anor. He had been up early preparing their trip and all the finery that came with it. Today was special to them both, and Undial wanted to make sure it was well remembered. Today marked the 1 year anniversary of their wedding, and he remembered the day in all its glory. He wore his dress uniform. He had visited the quartermaster of the kitchens the previous day, who had packed the carriage for their ride out to one of the many beautiful plains of Pegador. The quartermaster Pogo had given him specific instructions on how to unload the cart and to take each item out in turn. On arrival, he placed down the blanket and told Anor to sit. He would be doing everything else. The place he had chosen was filled with wildflowers and vibrant colors of purple, red, yellow, and blue could be seen far and wide. Tall grasses split up the landscape into small patchwork sections, giving privacy to anyone who visited and wanted to be alone. It was known as the Wild Gardens, for it is one of the most beautiful grasslands in the kingdom. People would travel from far off lands just to visit the Wild Gardens, and it was not uncommon for folks to see the many exotic insects or beasts that lived here. Andil unloaded the full silver service packed for him, something usually reserved for the king and his generals. Aenor was very impressed by the display, and after finishing the meal, they both lay back, bathing in the heat. As they drank in the midday sun, Andile took a deep breath, smelling the scent of pollen in the air. He smiled broadly and felt at peace, away from the hustle and bustle of Enith, away from the endless complaints and negativity of his compatriots. The silence was what he loved most, and he had always said, since he could remember, that he would have a place out here in the wilderness, with lands as far as the eyes could see. As he as he thought these things, he pictured them in his mind's eye. The image of a villa in the heart of the grasslands. He and Anor with their 3 children. He could see them running around the farm, playing with their old dog, who still thought it was a puppy, and hearing the laughter echo through the air. He would grow food and slaughter cattle for their supplies, whilst Anor spun wool, making them into items for the sale in the local towns nearby. Moving his hands behind his head, he slowly opened his eyes, blinking to adjust to the light. He turned his head to the right and saw his soulmate lying next to him. Such beauty he could not believe existed until she came into his life. It was a coincidence that they came to be together, a random chance meeting that no one could have foretold, not even the great witch of the wilds, Lilithium. Lilithium. Not even the great witch of the wilds, Lilithium, who was known to have predicted the future, again, depending on which tavern you visited. For now, though, Andile was completely at peace with everything he had. His command of the garrison armies, the move to the grasslands in the coming cycle of the moon. And the most important thing, his wife. As the day grew along, and Dial had a feeling that he couldn't shake, a feeling that had been with him all day, but had been pushing to the back of his mind. It reminded him of the battle at Juleviro, nervousness in the pit of the stomach before the coming assault. He put it down to the stress of his command, but it had been with him all day, almost as if someone was watching every move he made. Somehow, something felt wrong. Andela turned, looking towards where Ernor lay. He smiled to himself, drinking in her image and longing to touch her. Her head turned, and he saw her eyes, deep, royal purple, eyes that had a temptation and said a million words without a sound. She smiled a beautiful, warm smile and began to laugh, lightly. The sound resonated in his ears, and he too began to whisper. He whispered, "I love you." "Silly," she replied. "Of course you do. I would know if you didn't." Her voice was angelic, which warmed his heart. Her smile faded, and she turned her head from him. Puzzled, and Dial asked, "What's wrong?" he asked. Her voice sounded distant, as if 100 leagues away. "You know I cannot stay. This is nothing more than a dream, and now you must wake." This was the feeling in his stomach, the pitted knot of emptiness that this was not real. Not wanting to believe it, he shook his head in disagreement. "This is real," he said, but the words spoken were empty, as if he could not believe what he was saying. The sadness in his heart grew to an aching pain. "No, this is real. It feels real." He told himself this 100 times in his head, but his heart knew the truth, the pain of what was to come. His panic began to rise as he started to lose control of the world around him. The sun grew dim as if someone had moved it farther away, taking the warmth and heat from the air. And Dial turned to Anor. "We need to go," he said. Standing, he looked towards the horizon before turning back, reaching for her, but she was gone. Blind panic struck him, and his breathing increased rapidly. "Aenor," he shouted. "Aenor, where are you?" But was met with nothing but echoes across the vast landscape. And Dial began looking in all the directions, and he noticed the sky turning gray and overcast, filling the air with a bitterness that left him feeling cold and empty. He heard a tremendous thud, thud, thud coming from the distance, and he turned in the direction of the mountains, thinking this was where the noise came from. He witnessed the Nia Bridge tips, the tallest mountain range in the northern tundra, fade away as a blanket of white fog began to roll in towards him. Thud, thud, thud. The sound came again, growing with intensity, and he could feel the earth beneath his feet begin to shake. Steadying himself, he turned to run, but the white mists enveloped him, swirling about his body like some serpent from the eastern sea. He pushed on through, but it was no use. He stayed stagnant, no matter how hard he tried. As he tried to advance, he continued to shout for his wife, "Aenor!" But his voice was muffled by the thick blanket of mist. Breathing heavily, he stopped, shouting, as he knew he was starting to lose control. Calming himself, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes, thinking and questioning himself. Where could she have gone? He began to relax slightly and opened his eyes. A shadowy figure moves near the corner of his eye. Within an instant, he drew his dagger from his belt, a gift that Aenor had given him for the first wedding anniversary. It was an expensive gift, handcrafted by the master forger in Ineth. It was inscribed with 3 small runes, going from the bolster of the blade and stopping by the tip. Holding the blade brought back the memory of the gift, and his mind wandered. Wonderful. All right. So, end story reading. First off, really, really good. Oh my goodness. First off, really, really great start to the story. I am so intrigued and pulled into this. I'm so intrigued. You do enough foreshadowing that it intrigues and pulls the reader in. And then the fact that he's in a dream that it doesn't come across as a dream at first is very intriguing to me. And I wasn't expecting that. Like, I knew this was about dream walking, but I almost like the way the story's set up, it feels like, okay, so it's taking place in the real world. He's going to start in the real world and learn dream walking later. But I actually like that. I was so intrigued by that. And I think the relationship between Endile and his wife was really well done. I think that the love between them in the manner that you tackle it so far is intriguing and done. I am so intrigued by this. And oh, the names. I loved your name choice. So when we're using names in fantasy stories, it's very easy to choose names that are difficult and might not work with each other. But you have a naming structure in this story where it feels like each of the names are part of the story itself and they're part of the world. Um, the main character, Endile, I'm blanking on his last name. What was it? Endile Isare. For some reason, this gives me that same like tone of because I was just recently rewatching a Game of Thrones, and it gives me the same tone of one of those characters of the Sword Master in the very beginning, and Dario Farrell. Wait, Serial Farrell, the Master Swordsman, Serial Farrell. And it gave me that kind of like mystical naming structure to it. So I absolutely loved it. I think the name works. And Dial, Andil. I mean, Andile, I think is the only real way to pronounce it. So I think naming was absolutely great work. Now, as I look at like what things work the best of it, I would say character development was the strongest, world building was the strongest, and the plot. So far, the plot is very intriguing. I can't tell yet whether or not the plot is effective because we're so early on, but so far the plot does enough to intrigue and pull you in. Um, Even the dialogue is well done. I think right now, like I might challenge the structure a little bit, but let's dig into it. I need to get a better sense of it. I think right now, like with where it's at, it feels like a solid rough or second draft. This is the type of draft where it right now it feels like this would be ready to send to an alpha beta reader or to send to an editor, whatever the route is that you would go. Um, yeah, it feels like this is kind of the state that it's at. There's no glaring issues, at least just from this section. Um Prologue, oh, of course, it's called The Dream, so clearly he's in the dream. I don't know how that went right over my head. Okay. So as we hop into it, let's see. So the beginning is really good. Um you know what? I would almost think that like I I would almost think that I don't think you need to call it The Dream actually. Because I think or maybe do a title choice that's a little bit more subjective. Simply because I think there was a really great foreshadowing and I think it actually works as an intrigue of like okay, I'm setting up this world and oh, he is in a dream or they are in a dream. And I think that's actually intriguing. So I would almost recommend leaving that as almost like a mystery and an intrigue to pull the reader into the story. But that's a subjective one. Oh, Desolate, I just saw you hopped in. Missed my story critique. As a side note, pause this real quick. Dessa, we did your story last. It was a really great story, by the way. But definitely just watch the replay, and I'll add the time code so you can go back and check it out. And then just email me if you had any like questions about the critique at all. Okay, so let me continue on this. So let's see, the field of green stretched far and wide. Pegador Kingdom, known for its vibrant grassy plains, humble beasts, and crystal clear waters. I love the world building. The world building is really good. During the middle sun. Yeah, so I think right now you're doing a good job of setting up the world. I think the only real opportunity is in this is just structure. So like this is all a single paragraph. And let's just make this one paragraph 12. Let's just see what it looks like. Nope. Let's try that one more time. I just want to show you something. Okay. So this is all a single paragraph right here. And this is even in Georgia. Let's say that we did the common, which would be Times New Roman. So looking at this, if this was the opening of the story and like let's say the highlighting wasn't there, you might lose readers from reading the story just because they're seeing a big block of text. So we never, never, never want to do full blocks of text, simply because from a visual perspective, we want white spaces. So I would break up this first section into a couple paragraphs. Hence why I think like the structure is the biggest opportunity of this. But yeah, that's just like a side note. I just wanted you to see that. I would break up these descriptions into 3 paragraphs, or maybe cut down the description just a little bit. Yeah, but what you're describing works. And he purposed idea to King Neuron. This is all good. Brutal punishment. It was found by fitting member. Yeah, and I think it could easily be broken up. In all honesty, like you could literally break up like the description of the you could do like the description of the lands, then the description of the kingdom. There's a couple ways you could go about it, but that's actually not too difficult. Field Marshal, we go through there. This is good setting up this background. I would probably cut down on here's the youngest soldier within the city guard. I mean, no, this is actually all development for Endio's character. Actually, I don't have any problems with it. Maybe just some minor line editing. Yeah, maybe just some minor line editing. To just be a little bit more on brevity, but it's all interesting. And I said elves came as men would be ready to defend the city and win. That's interesting. That's setting up the some stakes in the world. You're doing a lot of good world building. His plans for today, though. Yeah, and I would say just same with structuring, just something to be aware of as you're kind of revising this on making sure that you're not having full paragraphs, just checking that throughout the story. And then the A&R part. So I would this is interesting. So you do a lot of description for A&R, which is amazing. You do a really good job of setting her up. Um Sit down here, be doing something else. The Wild Gardens. So Service Park Dome, something. So what I wanted to show. Okay. So right now, I couldn't shake. I want to say that we have about that's what we have right now. We have 1, 2, 3. Dog. And a half, so 4. So, and this is all blown up, of course. So this is probably about 2 to 3 pages of setup and description of him and Anor's relationship. I would recommend cutting this down by about half. And here's why. So their relationship is really important, but right now what it feels like is you're giving us a lot more exposition to set up the relationship itself and set up how special she is. But I think you can accomplish the same amount in half the amount of time. What I loved the most about the two of them was their conversation. For me, Andil's and Anor's, their relationship, the most profound moments of it for me was the dialogue portion. This portion right here was the most profound for me. Because it was in the present moment. I want to get to this moment sooner, a little sooner in the story. So I would just cut down on the exposition by about 2 pages. Well, not about, I mean, that was probably just by about half. And ask yourself, like, what is absolutely critical to understanding this right now, and what can I say for maybe a little later? Simply because I don't want you to chance losing your reader's interest, and we want your reader to stay engaged in whatever the action is going to be. By the way, my favorite name in this, Witch of the Wilds, Lithium. I love that name. But yeah, other than just like cutting down for brevity, I would say I loved their conversation. That was great. Oh, that was just an extra dialogue tag. But this is so good. Like this scene right here, when them sitting in the field and she's saying that she can't stay, I want to get to this like a couple pages sooner because this is so intriguing and this is so unique. And I think this is what will really keep your reader engaged into foreshadowing later into the story. Truly. Um, is her and like this is just so good. So good. So this is such a good moment. Chris Rappaport. Yeah, and then the descriptions that you use for the tundra and the landscape is actually really, really fun. Yeah, like I had so much fun going through this part. I feel like as a reader, I was fully engaged by the time I got to their conversation. But before that, I was still kind of like a little iffy. So I think getting to this action sooner will definitely keep your readers as engaged as possible. And then the rest of this action is just interesting. I don't know what's going on yet, since we're only probably like part way into the first chapter, in the beginning of a whole fantasy story. But definitely by this point, I'm asking myself, like, oh, okay, what's this like dream world? Oh, what happened to Anor? Is she not real? Is she real? Who's this character with the blade? Are we about to get some type of fight? We get a shadowy figure. Um, we also get like there's a lot of backstory on the world, which is interesting. So really, really great work. A lot of really great storytelling, Mike. Thanks for submitting this. Let's see. Let me hop into the comments. That's correct. Feel free to read more. Yeah, thank you. So I with all these readings, Mike, I only do about 10 minutes of a reading and 10 minutes of a critique, but definitely feel free if you want to resubmit it for later for future story and critique shows. So that way I have enough time to get through everybody. But I definitely really enjoyed what I read so far. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then like if you're wanting like more in-depth like critique or you're wanting more feedback on more of the story, you can always reach out to me for I offer a lot of different writing services through my the Creative Ghost, my writing company. But yeah, really great start to it. Definitely hope that you get it published because it definitely seems like a really great story. Thanks for submitting it, my friend. That was really cool. Awesome. Thanks, Katan. Good narration. Woo, I tried. I was enjoying getting into the voice. I like always love dreamwalkers and dream scenarios, so like I was so intrigued by that. I was like, oh, yeah, I love that. I really want to know more. Absolutely agreed. Definitely another great start to the story. 100%. Let's see what else do I got. And Sean, you're like great descriptive writing. I feel like the first paragraph could be broke down so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. I'm just as intrigued as Jared. Keep it up. Yep, awesome. Thanks for sharing that, my friend. Completely agree. Same. Um, excellent. And then Desolate, I called you out just so you know to check the previous story. Excited. We start off with the horror story, so that was fun. Awesome. Yeah, glad that helped, Mike. Thanks again for submitting it. And definitely with like long stories, because I know most of you who are submitting excerpts, small excerpts of much larger stories. If you ever want me to read like more in depth, or if you ever want me to read more excerpts on future shows, you just basically resubmit it and be like, hey, continue to include the title, genre, and the pen name, and then also be like, hey, this is where you read last time. Start here. And we could always do that. We have a number of community members where we've gone through different parts of their story throughout, what are we on, episode 24. So throughout the last 23 episodes of the story and critique show, we've definitely had a number of community members where we've gone through different portions of their story. So it's definitely doable. Awesome. And now with that, let's see, who are we got next? So Mary, I got your story up next. We got Crystals, which is a fantasy story. We've actually done a few chapters previously. And Mary, I know I saw you in the chat at some point. So I'm queuing up your story next. I'll throw that up in just a moment. Now, this is actually, I wanted to call out, do a quick shout out for my alpha and beta reading services. So I want to say a couple weeks ago, I added alpha and beta reading to my writing services that I offer. It is the cheapest of all my writing services because I recognize that the writing process can be expensive. I price my writing services come the alpha beta reading services to about 20-ish per hour, depending on the word count and depending on the skill level of the writer. Basically, I ask myself, how long will it take me to read through a story? You see what I'm doing with the stories here on the critique show, it's basically, it's kind of like alpha and beta reading. I realize this is essentially alpha beta reading to a certain extent, except I'm doing this in a live format and I have less time to really process things. So definitely, if you're looking for an alpha beta reader, if you just finished a full rough draft of a story, or maybe you have like a second or third draft and you need feedback, you just need somebody to tell you like, all right, these parts work, these characters are great, this part of the world sucks, this plot is awesome. If you need that type of feedback, let me know. And definitely reach out, shoot me an email. I will drop my email, Kaufman at the-creative-ghost.com. If you want to know more, and I can always send over a proposal. Perfect. So with that out of the way, and oh, by the way, the comment of the day game. So keep those comments coming. Keep them coming. I love seeing more and more comments. Anytime there's a part of the story you like, you dislike, drop it and why. Because all feedback is good feedback, as long as it's delivered in a way that is kind. We all want our stories to be published. I want each of you who've submitted your story to see the success and the results that you deserve. And the only way for us to get there is to get feedback. So definitely keep those comments coming, whether they're clever, helpful, or comedic. Wait, what's that? Clever, helpful, comedic. I'm like, yeah. So keep those comments coming and I'll announce the winner at the end of the stream. All right, perfect. And I got your story queued up, Mary. Crystals, a fantasy story. Wonderful. Okay, perfect. So I am all set on my end. Let me throw this up here. All right, so I got crystals. So for those of you who've missed out on some of our previous story and critique shows, we've gone through, I want to say we've gone through a couple different iterations of the first three draft or the first three chapters of Mary's story, Crystals. Essentially, at heart, we're following the story of young Jasper and Danessa as they are now orphans and traveling through this fantasy type, medieval type fantasy world as they have these crystals with them. And we're coming to learn more about the power of the crystals. And they're currently being chased by the king and the king's guard. Sounds like we kind of got a crazy king who wants the power of the crystals for himself. So we're going to hop into it and see what we got for looks like the end of chapter 4. Perfect. So we're at the end of a chase sequence. Ah, awesome. I know. It's like super hot outside, isn't it? We're in the middle of summer. It's the heat waves and all the fires are like horrible. The air is so smoky over here where I'm in the west coast of the US. And it's just very smoky here. Too many fires, it sucks. I absolutely love that, Mary. Trouble beginning, start writing until you find the beginning. Absolutely love that. 100%. Okay. Crystals, end of chapter 4. He was just about to climb down, but saw the captain standing by a sewer opening. So that way out was no longer an option. Jasper would have to use stronger magic than he ever used before to get away altogether, but he wasn't quite sure how. The captain was yelling at his guards. I said, get down there! Breathe through your mouth if you must, but go! Jasper watched as one at a time the two guards were starting to climb down into the sewers. It was all he could do to keep from laughing. Quiet as he could, he started back the way he had come. One board creaked, so he ducked down and kept still. They must not have heard, as no one seemed to be any closer. Ah, thank the gods, he thought. Thunder rolled overhead. Good, he thought. A thunderstorm is just what I need. But there were still two guards in the other direction, a few alleys over. Having found nothing, they headed back towards their captain before they could get to the building he was on. Jasper took a chance and climbed down one of the rusty metal ladders, hoping to duck out before the guards reached him. Back on the streets, he thought he would have a better chance to run. Just as he got to the bottom, he heard a shout. Over here! I think I heard something! Jasper ducked in a doorway and tried to will himself invisible. He was barely breathing as he heard the guards come dangerously close to him. Holding the orb, but keeping it hidden under his cloak, he concentrated. Go to the sewers with the others. Your captain wants you. Go now. Run. One of the guards said, He's not here. We already searched this part. Let's hurry and find the captain. As they left the area, Jasper thought he was free and clear when when a scraping noise behind him made him jump. Mole, he whispered. Thank the gods, it's only you. Mole put a finger to his lips, shook his head, and pointed. One guard was still hanging back and looking all around him. He breathed a heavy sigh, then finally left. Too close, said Mole quietly. Didn't we teach you better than that? He put on his best smirk. In trouble again? Dia and I were in the marketplace, you know? Mole nodded. I noticed, and as did everyone else in town. Then you saw we split up when they started after us. I told Dee to head to the woods. I don't know if she made it, though. Got any ideas how to get past these guys? Mole nodded. Of course. But first things first, we need to talk. Talk? There's no time. Not here, Jasper turned away. Mole grabbed him by the arm. No. Here, now. This was the first time he showed the least bit of real strength. Come on. Come on, Mole said. I got a place we can go. Follow me. Oh, awesome. And that is the end of the section. Wonderful. Really, really great continuation on this bit, Mary. Really, really great work. Thanks for submitting that. And round of applause. So what I actually really love, every single time I dig into the next section of your story, I feel like I'm getting more in-depth character development, and I can tell how your story is evolving more and more and more with each reading, especially from the very first time when we were first introduced to Jasper and Danessa to where it's at now. Mole now has a little bit more of a personality, and the tension that he has between Mole and Jasper is actually really interesting. And I think you do some really I think you do a really interesting thing here with Jasper and potentially an ability. It's hard to say. But we're kind of at the end of this little chase scene. So let's hop into it. I have a couple of notes, a couple of ways to help you out here. So far, I'm liking the character development. I think the character development is definitely improving. Let's see. I think we could probably work on the dialogue just a little bit. Loving the plot, and the world building is still definitely improving. So those are just some of my initial thoughts. Absolutely. Mike, you got me. You really do your readings with lots of attitude. Don't you know it, my friend? If there's anyone, I got a lot of catitude, especially my cat would think so. Okay. So let's see. The captain was yelling. I said, get down there. Let's see. So, okay. So we're at the end of this We're at the end of the last chapter. I have to use stronger magic. Okay. So as we're in this little chase scene, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so Mary, there's a really good opportunity here as with interiority. So let's see. The captain was yelling at his guards. It said, "Get down there, breathe through your mouth if you must, but go." That's good. Jasper's watching all this. Now, when with interiority, when we think about this, thank the gods, he thought, we don't actually need to put thank the gods. We don't actually need to put he thought, because since Jasper is the only point of view character, it's actually assumed that he's thinking it. So by including he thought, that's additional words that's just unnecessary. So we can actually do they must not have heard as no one seemed to be any closer. And I would actually make this a new paragraph and it'd be like, they must not have heard as no one seemed to be any closer. Thank the gods. And you don't actually really need to do an italics. I mean, you could. Thank the gods. Thunder rolled over. Thank the gods. Thank the gods. Thunder rolled over. Yeah, so I would do this as thank the gods. He watched the thunder roll overhead. I think I would go there. He watched the thunder roll overhead. Good. A thunderstorm is just what I need. Perfect. And you see, like, the interiority isn't as important unless you're doing it, unless there's like an intentional reason behind italicizing that. But there were still two guys in the other direction. If he is over. So, okay. Thank the gods. He watched the thunder roll overhead. Good. A thunderstorm is just what I need. But there were still two guards in the other direction, a few alleys over. Perfect. So I would nothing that headed back. Yeah, so I would do that. And I think if I was adding to this, he wanted thunder roll. A thunderstorm is just what I need. And then because you're mentioning the thunderstorm, I would end off this paragraph on how is the thunderstorm going to affect these guards. I would do something like get rid of the italics. One of the guards. One of the guards pulled a poncho. I don't know what the fantasy version is. Pulled a blanket over his head as it began to rain. Something as simple as that. But there were still two guards in the other direction, a few alleys over. Or if you don't want to do that, I'd make this a new paragraph. Thunderstorm is just what I need. Let's see. He checked. He turned, but there were still two guards. Thunderstorm is just what I need. But there were still two guards in the other direction. If the eyes over, yeah, actually, I think that would work. I feel like there's a better, like I could add a little bit more description here. But I'm probably just being picky. So I think that could work. John, you actually made a really good point. You said the thunder rolled over, adding the helps with the flow. He watched the thunder roll overhead. He watched thunder roll overhead. Actually, yeah, they definitely does sound better. Good call out. ML, you're like, I enjoyed the story. I was glad we did not have to go into the sewers. I was like, oh, nobody wants to be in the sewers. Let's see. So before they could go back to the building he was on, Jasper took a chance and climbed down one of the rusty metal ladders. So we're still back in this chase scene. Over here, I think I heard something. So I really like this moment. Over here, I think I heard something. Jasper ducked in the doorway and tried to will himself invisible. Interesting. So is this like invisible like an actual like magic power of a crystal, or is this more like a phrase of speech? So I would just clarify that. Jasper ducked in a doorway and tried to and pushed himself against the wall, trying to blend into the wall. Or Jasper ducked into a doorway and retrieved the crystal out of his pocket to will himself invisible. Right. So I think just adding a little bit of clarification there would help us, because you're doing some potentially cool things. And I think we're getting some magical elements here, but I want to make certain. He was barely breathing as he heard the guards come in. And this is another reason we can actually cut out he heard as the guards, or no, actually he's hiding. He's hiding. So actually heard's fun. He was barely breathing as he heard the guards come dangerously close to him. I would actually, if I was going to like reword this, I would actually say he was barely breathing as the footsteps of the guards, thudded against the not pavement, against the stones, or against the walkway as they came dangerously close to him. Yeah, I think that's how I would do it. He was barely breathing as the footsteps of the guards thudded against the walkway. Oh, cobblestone, Mike. Good call. Cobblestone. I'm like, what's the fantasy thing for like pavement? Cobblestone. Yeah, the cobblestone. He was barely breathing as the footsteps of the guards thudded against the cobblestone. He was barely breathing as the footsteps of the guards thudded against the cobblestone. Actually, I wouldn't do as the second one, because I hate repeating words. He was barely breathing as the footsteps of the guards thudded against the cobblestone. They came dangerously. They were they came dangerously close to him. They were coming dangerously close to him. They were coming dangerously close to him. Yeah, so I think that's how I would do it. He was barely breathing. Yep. Holding the orb, but keeping it hidden under his cloak, he concentrated. Now something else, like a little description of like, what does the orb do? Does the orb flash at all? Holding the orb as it flashed. Holding the orb, it flashed a dull blue. I want to know, because I'm so intrigued by this. I want to know more about the orb, because I think it's super cool. Keeping it hidden, he concentrated. Holding the orb, but keeping it hidden under his cloak. I mean, it's hidden, so technically you don't actually have to describe the visualization of it. That's fun. Go to the sewers with the others. Okay, so yep. So this is when I would use interiority. So I meant not interiority. This is when I would use italics, because this is an actual, like, this is him using his magic power or his concentration to the orb. Go to the sewers with the others. Your captain wants you. Go now. Run. One of the guards said, he's not here. We already. Now, to make this a little clearer, what I would actually do is I would actually have Jasper, what he says, be taken word for word by the guards. And the way I would do this, let me pull this up. Let's see. Go to the sewers with the others. Your captain wants you. Go now. Run. The guards. Let me take away this. I'm gonna rewrite this. So the way I would go about this, no more yellow. Okay. Let's see. One of the guards. He heard he heard the footsteps pause as one of the guards stated, he's not here. He's not here. And I would actually have like a really good foreshadowing moment of being like, Jasper is like worried he's not here. Jasper worried that the orb didn't work. And then the gruff voice of the other guard said, and then I would actually copy what he said word for word. Go to the sewers with the others. Your captain wants you. Go now, run. Go to the sewers with the others. Your captain wants you. Go now, run. Go now. The guard tried to protest, but he finished. Run. I think that's how I would go about it if I was doing this little section, simply because this makes it a little bit clearer in that his ability directly works on them. Like, that's the reason that they run away. This is a good call out. Who's a Star Wars fan? Who is a Star Wars fan here in the chat? If you're a fan of Star Wars or you've enjoyed any of the Star Wars movies, regardless of which movie, just say I in the comments. I'm very curious. Any Star Wars fans here, just say I. So this is the exact type of moment we have in A New Hope, episode 4, the original Star Wars. That moment when we have Luke Skywalker with Obi-Wan Kenobi and R2-D2 and C-3PO when they're still on Tatooine, right before the famous cantina scene. They're going and they get stopped by stormtroopers. The stormtroopers are like, you can't pass, or we're looking for Luke. Obi-Wan Kenobi says, let us pass. And they do this a lot in Star Wars. This is just the first example. Exactly. Mike Edwards, this is one of the those famous Star Wars lines. These are not the droids you are looking for. This is a very famous line. Obi-Wan Kenobi, using the Force, says, these are not the droids you are looking for. The stormtrooper, who originally was going to say something else, then responds, these are not the droids we are looking for. And it's so crystal clear that the Force was used as that power. It's clear because the way that the stormtrooper responds is almost word for word, not 100%, but close. This is like the same exact thing that you're trying to accomplish with the guards here. So I would use that same model, absolutely, because that's very famous scene. I know, it's back to the original episode days. We've come so far in the Star Wars franchise. But yeah, Mary, I would recommend, even like if you just go watch, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, even watching that one scene, it's like 20 minutes into episode 4 of Star Wars, the original movie. Definitely worth the watch if you want to get an idea for that scene. Okay, so the guard tried to protest. And then Mole. So I actually really like I really like that the Mole is that you've done some character development for Mole. I love what you're doing with them. And I like this. He starts to talk and Mole does the finger thing. And we're like, all right, cool. That works. That's a good moment. Very, very good moment. And then let's see, too close. Said Mole quietly, didn't we teach you better than that? He put on his best smirk. I want a little more action. Not action. I want a little descriptions on what Mole looks like right now and a little bit of Mole's actions. And I know you've adjusted some earlier parts of the story, so we probably get more descriptions of him sooner on. But I just kind of picture Mole as this like short character with like large glasses who's like very like squirmy. But that could be from for any fantasy readers in the audience, the Sword of Truth series, a predominant or kind of a supporting character from that story, who's called a Mole. His nickname is the Mole, always comes to mind. Too close, said Mole quietly. Woo! Hey, what's up, Farrell? What's up? Love the Sword of Truth. You came in at a good time. My Sword of Truth love series over here. But yeah, there's one of the characters is introduced. His nickname is Mole. Everyone calls him that. think it's introduced in books like 3 or 4, I believe. Uh, it's the same, like, idea with that character. In trouble again. Dia and I were in the marketplace. But yeah, I think the only thing, like, I'm actually fine with the dialogue. I think the dialogue does work. I just want a little bit more about what Mole's doing. Like, too close, said Mole quietly as he adjusted his glasses. Didn't we teach you better than that? He put on his best smirk as he leaned against him and blew him a kiss. Some whatever Mole's like personality is. So I just want like a little bit of Mole's personality outside of his dialogue. Well, I know Mole needs goggles. Thinking back to any of my Nintendo 64 friends, anybody, one of my favorite games when I was younger was Banjo Kazooie. That's definitely like Mole and goggles. Oh god, that brings me back. Um, let's see. Mole nodded and Ustas did everyone else in town. And then the rest of this is good. Yeah, so that's all. That's all that I got for you. I think that's some really good work. Mary, that's some really great progress that you're making. Really, really awesome. Keep writing, keep sending more. And I'm like, I love how much growth the story is getting. I like Mole in this section. Mole's my favorite character of the story. Crazy old lady is my favorite character, followed by Mole. I want more of crazy old lady and Mole, and that's a good thing because that means you're doing some great character development for these characters. And we haven't even dug into the depths of the story yet. So really great work, my friend. Thanks for submitting. All right, beautiful, wonderful. And let's see, what do we got next? So I'm going to be queuing up Remy Gray. So your story's on deck. I'm going to be queuing your story up next, my friend. Your story is on deck, The Desolation. And so while we're queuing that, let me just hop back into the chat. Let's see, where were we at? Mike, but it's only in the sewers that you can get a rat burger. Guys, what are you talking about? In fantasy stories, the only thing people eat is stew and rat burgers. Oh, I love that. Let's see. It looks like you had a comment. What about losing the passive he watched and just starting with, oh, you're mentioning the Thunder Roll and I missed it. It's more direct and less wordy. It's like we're experiencing it with the character, not through them. Mm-hmm. So you watched. Yeah, so that's a good call out. I know what Eli is referring to. Um, Sometimes it's important to have a character saying he saw this, he watched this, they acted on this. Sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not. But you do have to recognize sometimes it can pull the reader out of experiencing it with the character themselves. Yeah, that was a really great call out. Absolutely. Yeah, I like this because I was starting to talk about the action, the visual of it. But I like you could describe the feeling of its power when he was holding it. Like he was holding the orb and could feel the magic within begin to swell. That's interesting. And because then that makes the reader of like, oh, what type of magic is he feeling? Like, is it like a vibration? Is it like this like energy that's flowing through my head now? There's so many directions you could take it in. I like that. This was a Star Wars call out. A quote that most people get wrong is, yeah, that is. I remember I went back and I rewatched Star Wars episode 5. Yeah, I mean that's episode 5. Luke, I'm your father. Yeah, that's the end of episode 5 a while back. And it's not Luke, I'm your father. It's like a different variation of that. It's like I am your father, Luke, or it's like some other iteration of that. But the common quote that people say is Luke, I am your father. That's a funny call out. Oh yeah, Mike, you have the quote. It's actually Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. Yep. Yep, that's what it is. Yet what became popular was the quote, Luke, I am your father. Great call out, Mike. A fellow Star Wars fan over here. Farrell, are you viewing your own or another person's work? So great question. So on Saturdays, I actually review other writers' work from the community. So writers from the community can submit stories for a live reading and a live critique. I should probably throw up the ticker at the bottom. So writers can submit it for a 10-minute reading and a 10-minute critique of their story. It's really fun. A lot of, as you can see, everyone gives some of their opinions in the chat. I just read through it and give whatever comes to mind. I accept all types of genres. So far today, we've done sci-fi, or we did horror and fantasy and fantasy. Yeah, we've done one horror and two fantasies so far, but we always get a mix. We always get a mix of different genres. I've been horror, fantasy, fan fiction, sci-fi, romance, poetry, scripts. It's all there. So if you're ever wanting feedback on your story, Farrell, definitely feel free to send over an excerpt to that email below with the title, genre, and the pen name, and I could queue it up. I might not have time for today's submission because I have a higher number, but I can always queue it up for if I do have time today or for next weekends for the next story and critique show. Absolutely. I know we've like chatted about your story a little bit. Would absolutely love to dig into it. Mike, you've got me on a Star Wars roll now. I know. Mike, the Force is with us. You know what's funny is one of my favorite quotes isn't even from the main Star Wars ones. It was from the well, it was this the one of the standalone stories. I always mix up the characters. It's been so long since I've looked at Star Wars stuff. With my goodness, it's gonna bug me. Star Wars movies. Rogue One. It was Rogue One. One of my favorite quotes is from Rogue One with the blind monk character who believes so much in the Force. And he's like literally fighting through this entire field, the blind monk character, and he's like, the Force is with me. I am the Force. The Force is with me. I am the Force. And I love it. I love that concept of that anybody can technically have access to it, but there's a huge belief element. But yeah, Pharaoh, Sword of the Truth series, it was one of my favorite series when I was growing up. Absolutely loved it. I haven't read some of the more recent installments, but I think my favorite was up through the Confessor, the Chainfire trilogy was so incredibly. If anybody's like a fan of epic fantasy, like so well done. I think it lost a lot of relevance and prevalence after the TV shows didn't do too well, unfortunately. The TV show they did a TV show and it was just very like mixed. It was just all right. They didn't really stick to what the same type of story. They tried to change the format and it just wasn't really effective, unfortunately. You're saying I did change earlier chapters. He's tall, beady eyes, a pointy nose, and pops up when least expected, like a mole. Nice. Like that. Hey, what's up, WTC? Glad to have you in here, my friend. Stew and rat burgers. Yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. that that gets pinned to the that gets pinned in Twitch because that's a great comment in the over in Twitch. Let's see. That was a callback to Demolition Man. So good. There's interest. Just 5. Boop, boop. Yeah, so like talking about like Sword of Truth. Yeah, the show is disappointing. I actually saw the show before finding the books. Couldn't believe how terribly they did it. I mean, yeah, I mean, so like we all know how difficult it is to adapt a book into a successful TV show. we all know we're all like most of us are fantasy enthusiasts. We know how well Game of Thrones was done, seasons 1 through 6. That's how you adapt a TV show. But they also took a lot of the source material very directly before they started making their own decisions. Um, I think the best video game to television adaptation was probably The Last of Us. Probably the strongest video game adaptation I've done or I've seen, with Fallout being a little being closely behind. Ooh, that's talk about good timing. I just listened to Wizard's First Rule yesterday. Such a great book. Emma, I don't know if you've read through the series before, if you've listened to it, but like Sword of Truth is such a great series. Sword of Truth is such a great series. Phenomenal characters. I really wish the TV show had been more successful. I really do, because the philosophical concepts that he explores throughout the series is just like pretty incredible. It's very in depth philosophical concepts. Mhm. Yeah, me too. When I was younger, my favorite like fantasy stories or my favorite fantasy series was Lord of the Rings, Wheel of Time, and Sword of Truth. Are my top three favorite fantasy epic series. I know, right? Like thinking back to the lightsaber battles, especially with Luke versus Darth Vader in like the original trilogy. Oh, so much fun. I'm like totally like nerding out here between my science fiction and fantasy loves right now. Yep, absolutely. Submit it for future episodes, Mike. Thanks again for submitting it. Looking forward to reading a little bit more of it. Absolutely. Last of Us was absolutely gorgeous. It was just so well done. Um, Wheel of Time mixed. How do I feel about the Wheel of Time adaptation? It just mixed. Um, as a standalone show, Wheel of Time is like a decent mediocre fantasy series. But what the show's not doing is it's not trying to cater to the core fan base, because they're making so many different decisions. And they're trying to say like, okay, well, we need to make these decisions to work with longer. No, they want to make their own decisions, probably based off the production company, the producers. I'm sure there's a lot of factors into it, but it just doesn't cater as much to the fans. Last of Us caters to the fans 100%, while also doing things that elevates the experience. Wheel of Time does a decent enough job of doing a standalone fantasy story, but doesn't cater to the fans and it doesn't elevate that experience. Two just different, wildly different takes on adaptations, unfortunately. It's close. I think Wheel of Time is 15, but I forgot. It's it's in like the 12 to 16 range. I think Jordan passed away. Robert Jordan passed away at the end of book 10, I believe. And then Sanderson came in and did 11, 12, and 13. Or it might be 12 through 14. But yeah, it's something to that nature. There's probably another reason that Sanderson's career further blew up, actually, now that I think about it. Granted, I don't know how prevalent he was before Wheel of Time, but him finishing the Wheel of Time series was a huge, huge thing. Yeah, it's definitely good. Like digging into the Wheel of Time is really, really good. If you've liked the show at all, they'll definitely get a lot of value out of the books because they're just more in depth. Yeah, Eli. I mean, I agree with you, Eli, but I think it's like I think there's so many factors in place, and I think we've seen from Game of Thrones that it can be done, right? So clearly they just had another take. It's unfortunate. It sucks. Just like the last season of Game of Thrones, it sucks. It is what it is. That's why it makes the shows that are incredible, like Last of Us, Fallout. Um, that's why it makes those stand out. Beautiful, wonderful. All things I love chatting about. Uh, okay, so let's hop into the next story. So we got reading number 4. So Remy, I saw you here in the chat earlier. Just say hi if you're still here in the chat. I'm gonna throw you up. So we're gonna be digging into The Desolation by Remy Gray. And if you're enjoying the stream, share it with a friend. Tap the share button. Share it right now. The more writers we bring to the community, the more fun conversations we have, and the more value you can get when you submit your story for a live reading. All right, beautiful. And Remy, I know you sent me both the story and a pronunciation guide. So okay, so let's see. I need to have this pronunciation guide handy. Okay. Okay, perfect. So I got the pronunciation guide here, and I got your story all set up. Okay, and I am all set. So we're going to be digging into The Desolation, a young adult fantasy by Remy Gray. And we're going to we did the first chapter of The Desolation about maybe about 2 months ago. Yeah, I want to say it was about 2 months ago. So we did the first chapter. We had the setup for, if I recall correctly, we had the setup for this a female character, which is super interesting. I have to make sure I didn't miss more. Let me go check my email. Yeah, so we had the setup for, I believe it was a female character for, I think we're going to be they're facing some type of plague that's coming. It felt like a very much coming of age story with like a ceremony with these elders at the very beginning. So it was a really interesting setup for this like tribe, this culture that we're being introduced to. And it looks like we're now hopping into chapter 4. So let's dig into it. You guys are going to drink some water first. Okay. The Desolation. As time passed, things only grew worse. For 1 second. Need my lighter. All right. As time passed, things only grew worse oh, that's right. Need the pronunciation guide. All right, for Pador. Okay. I'm gonna reset that. As time passed, things only grew worse for Pador. For Pador. What was once only rumors around the village were now spoken about in hushed whispers as fact. Something was wrong, but no one knew what. Updates on his condition spread day by day, usually from volunteers who helped the healers. In just 1 week, growths covered his entire torso and most of his limbs. But what was worse? They had hardened, turning white and cracking open. It all sounded terrible. An illness like this was completely unprecedented. When I tried to learn more about what was happening, I discovered I wasn't alone in my confusion. No one seemed to have any answers, just more rumors. Well, I suppose that left me to find answers on my own. Where everyone else in the village was too scared to do anything but whisper, I would be the one to ask questions. I realized that if I wanted answers, I would have to go straight to the top. Elder Diarmid, Elder Diarmid, Dearmud. Elder Dearmud was the most knowledgeable member of our clan. As its leader, he was involved in everything. If anyone knew what was going on, it had to be him. These days, Elder Dearmud usually spent his time at the healing cabin. I decided my best course of action was to wait outside near dinner time. I didn't know what I was hoping to hear. I had no medical training, nor did I have any say in how the village ran. All I knew was there were too many unknowns. The whole situation left me feeling off balance and without control. I chewed the inside of my cheek as I leaned against the side of the cabin. From where I stood, It wasn't difficult to hear what was going on inside. The healers were darting around, mixing potions and applying ointments. They must have burned, judged, judging by the way, Pidar, Pador, Pador, judging by the way Pador groaned in pain. It was hard to listen to, but I pushed through the discomfort. Instead, I tried to focus on deciphering what was being said. I could hear Elder Dearmud and the elder healer's hushed voices, but couldn't make out the words. I was so focused that when the door finally opened, it startled me. I jumped and away from the wall, hoping that whoever came out hadn't noticed. It was Elder Dearmud, because of course it was. I pulled myself to my full height, trying to look confident and like I hadn't just been caught snooping. Elder Dearmud inclined his head, studying me. I held my head aloft. Elder Dearmud nodded, seeming to understand something. I wondered what he found while peering into my soul. Ah, hello, Anya. Ah, hello, Anya. He greeted. What can I do for you this evening? I cleared my throat. Nothing is being said. No one knows what's happening. I met his eyes head on. I understand there has to be a reason no one has addressed the situation. But I'd like to know, I said, pausing before finally tacking on a respectful, Sir. He sighed, obviously tired, but his eyes were fond. He put his large, weathered hand on my shoulder and steered me away from the cabin. We fell into step together, side by side. I wanted to have more answers before I addressed the village. But you are right. The time has come. He gave me a weary smile before continuing. To be perfectly honest, we have never seen anything like this. In all my long life, I have never encountered such an insidious disease. Not before the calamity, and certainly not since. He began, tucking his hands behind his hunched back as we walked. I'm sure you've heard around the village already, but the growths on his body are hardening. For lack of a better explanation, his skin seems to be calcifying. The healers and myself are trying everything in our arsenal to slow the spread, but so far there has been no luck. It would be easier if we knew what was causing it. I thought at first that it was a fungal infection, but if it was, it would have responded to treatment by now. His frown deepened as we grew closer to our destination. We are running out of ideas. The healers began experimenting, hoping something new will help. It's too soon to give up, and, well, there's one thing that keeps coming to my mind. It is the great green. There was a plant that we used medicinally to treat ailments of the skin, similar to this. It was a flower that you would dry out, crush into powder, and then bathe in. I'm sure it's long gone with the forest, however. I have instructed the hunters to be on a lookout for any unfamiliar plants out in the wastes, but so far, nothing of use has turned up. It wasn't good news. I finally understood why nothing had been formally announced yet. People were already beginning to panic. If it came to light that there was nothing that could be done, well, Elder Dearmid must have seen the helplessness in my face, because as we reached the dining area, he stopped and placed a hand on my shoulder. Do not lose hope, Anya. Alma is with us. Perhaps it will run its course. We will keep doing all we can to fight it until that happens. He was right, of course. Alma taught hope. I couldn't give up. That night after dinner, I went to our holy place to talk to Alma. It was a tree, much smaller than the rest. When our people migrated here from the Great Green, they brought a piece of home with them. It was a sapling. When they finally found the already dying forest we now live in, they planted it in a clearing. The sapling continued to grow in the desiccated earth for a few decades, defying all odds. Eventually, it died as well, but to us, it acted as a relic of where we came from, our true home and a representation of Alma. I sat against the base of the tree and prayed. I prayed for Pador, for answers to come, for some sort of cure. I trusted Alma, and I believed she would lead us through this. Even so, Pador worsened day by day. Then the unthinkable happened. There was news that another member of the clan, Old Man Tig, had what we can only describe as a rash on his arm. Having been there at the beginning with Pador, Lorcan and his hunting team were called in to compare it to what they had seen. They confirmed it was exactly how Pador's rash had started. I chose not to go to the sapling that day. Ooh, the plot thickens. Interesting, interesting. I absolutely love that. And absolutely really, really great excerpt, my friend. I think what I really appreciated about that was we're getting a lot of we're getting some initial descriptions of this disease, of this plague. Clearly the story is called the Desolation. So it sounds like this is probably like the beginning of this, of something that's about to become horrible, or I mean, or this could be a or it could be a false, like a false flag. Like maybe it's not the actual desolation, but it's still too early to tell. But very interesting. I think what's working the best is the world building was really strong in this. I'm very clear on what's going on this disease, and I'm very intrigued. I really want to know, like, okay, so it sounds like there's a flower that they need, but it doesn't grow anymore. So it makes me think that she's gonna have to go on some type of quest, maybe to go get the flower or go search for it. Um, or or the flower might, I just feel like the flower is gonna be some type of obstacle um to either save the brother or unless he dies. So very interesting. The plot, I would say the plot and the world building is my favorite in this. Um, I like I like the dialogue. I actually do like all the dialogue. I think that one of the biggest opportunities is it needs to be broken up just a little bit so it can get a little bit more character development. But yeah, let's dig into it from the beginning. So it's time things. Pador, the setup, this beginning of this is fine. I like this. It all sounded terrible. An illness like this was completely unprecedented. Great. I'm like, perfect. Like that makes it clear for the reader. The illness, like that's something new that they haven't dealt with before. Now, because we're in chapter 4 and this is an excerpt, we probably didn't get to see how the character felt about Pador. I wasn't sure if Pador was a brother or it was just another character in the village, but let's see. I completely forgot. Well, I suppose that okay. So because she's the one that that wants to go and get answers because she's the one who's like who's going to take charge. So it sounds like everyone's too afraid, and her taking charge is going in and listening in on what's going on, trying to get answers. I like this. So I'm very happy with the setup for this scene. All I know is there were too many unknowns. The whole situation left me feeling off balance and without control. Interesting. I kind of want to know more about this. Is it because of like a disease that she can't doesn't know how to deal with, or is it because of these characters are important, like they might be dying? Okay, cool. Thanks for the clarification. I'm sure you probably set that up already in the earlier chapters. So he's friends with her older brother. Gotcha. Something that I'm not quite clear on, Remy, um, are what is her dynamic with Pador? Is she friends with him at all, or is he like maybe like a distant like acquaintance of like, oh, my brother's friend? Do they have any type of dynamic at all? So I think that's kind of what I would want to know. I'm sure you might have set it up already, but I'm just kind of interested on, does she have any stakes on Pador's or does she care about Pador's outcome, or is it more about how that disease is going to affect everybody else? Because I think the way it comes across right now, it comes across like she doesn't really, something goes wrong, but no, It comes across right now that it doesn't feel like she cares too much about Pador, but she cares more about solving the problem of this plague or this disease that could potentially affect everybody. That's what it feels like. It feels like she has very low emotional investment in Pador's well-being. Yeah, perfect. So that's definitely how it comes across. If that's your intention, then that's great. Okay. And let's well, I suppose. So that's good. Utter deer mode. I mean, yeah, actually, Remy, like thinking about it, I think maybe to up the stakes, I might have her have some type of like dynamic with the older brother, because that would actually make that would make the stakes just a little higher. Not even like not they don't have to be friends or best friends, but I mean, when you're if you're growing up with siblings and your siblings have friends, like they probably hang out with the siblings all the siblings hang out with the friends all the time. You might end up hanging out with them every once in a while, but I think she would probably have some type of relationship with them and might have some vested interest. I think by raising those stakes just a little bit, it might actually make her make the reader care even more if we see that she doesn't want him to die or she doesn't want anything to happen to him, in addition to her wanting to know how it will affect the clan. But just a subjective recommendation. There's just a line edit here. The healers were darting around, mixing potions and applying ointments. They must have burned. I don't know what this means. I feel like this just needed to add some clarity to it, or it might have been missing a word or a statement. They must have burned the ointments. So I would just say, let's look at this line. They must have burned, judging by the way Padar groaned in pain. They must have burned what? I'm thinking it's the ointments, since that's the previous sentence. I like this moment. I was so focused when the door opened. I jumped away and from the wall, hoping that whoever came out hadn't noticed. I'm like, yeah, that's like that moment where the kid caught with their hand in the cookie jar. That was great. Let's see. I highlighted inclined. Okay. I highlighted inclined. I want to make sure you were using inclined, right? But you were. That's fine. I held my head aloft. Gemma nodded. I love this. I love this sentence. I wondered what he found while peering into my soul. I love that. This is probably my one of my favorite sentences of this like little of their exchange so far, because this sets it up, right? Clearly he is like the wise elder and this is a coming of age for her. So that's really well done. Very good word choice. Let's see. And Mary, like, sounds like the disease epiderm ep, epidermodysplasia. Verocif- Verociformis. Very rare. Potentially. Sounds like the burned his skin. I took it as the ointments burned the skin they were applied to. Yeah, okay, cool. The ointments burn because the skin is raw and cracked. Yep. I would just clarify that. It probably just needs a couple more like words to clarify. Um, so this is good actually. So like when they open up this paragraph, I cleared my throat. Nothing is being said. No one knows what's happening. I met his eyes head on. I understand there has to be a reason. No one has addressed the situation, but I'd like to know. I said, pausing before finally tacking on a respectful sir. And you actually do a good balance of dialogue and action in the first part of their conversation. This this sentence right here, we fell into step together side by side. This is a perfect example of how to describe an action in a way that's creative. You could have easily said, we we started walking together. Yeah, you could have easily said something of like, we started walking together along the trail or along the path. We fell into step together, side by side. That works very, very well. It's creative. Well done. I wanted to have more answers before I bet your village. Yep. So this is all good. This is forwarding the plot a little bit. I think what I wanted a little bit more of Elder Dearmud's character development. Like in this paragraph here, this paragraph's a little exposition-y. I would just break it up with a little bit more of the action of Elder Dearmud. Right now, it feels like this. I actually felt pretty good up until this moment, and then it kind of feels like you were trying to tell the reader what's happening instead of showing it. So I would just include a little bit more actions, or maybe them pausing along the path for a second, as subjective suggestion. But then you do good. You continue on here, frowning, good action. And then you do another long paragraph or another long use of dialogue. So yeah, I would just split it up with some action or interiority. But right now I want to get a little more of Elder Dearmud's actions because I'm just kind of intrigued. This section is really about how the main character is witnessing Elder Dearmud's response to this terrible thing that's happening. And then we're setting up the crux of this plant, which is interesting. I like that. In the Great Green, there was a plant that we used, and that's interesting. So this looks like some foreshadowing potentially. Yeah. I think actually, so with this one, I think this one's good. I think this first one needs to be split up by just some action or interiority. I think the second paragraph, the second dialogue, can just be edited down just for a little brevity. Because I mean, the main point of this is that they're losing time and there's a plant that they need, and they don't. It's the plant's extinct. So those are like the three things. I think this can just be edited down slightly. But this is all good. Her reaction is good. That's strong. And this is good. So yeah, the rest of this is good. I think it's just a little minor editing in that portion. And then yeah, this kind of wraps up like the end of the section. This is kind of just her praying for a cure. This kind of goes to show her like religious or her belief in the Great Green, her belief in Olma. And then we get the foreshadowing of another character has gotten sick. Interesting. So shadowing, this is great. I'm like, oh no. So now everyone's gonna die in this village. Unless she probably has to go on a quest to go get the plant. So interesting. Well done. Well done on the foreshadowing bit, Remy. Really, really intriguing. Um, I hope that we get even more descriptions. I hope that we get more descriptions on what the disease looks like, since that's like a very since that's like a huge crux of the plot. And I'm sure you probably do this, but I definitely hope that we get some very like detailed descriptions about like how like nasty and how like just like disgusting this disease is, because we want the disease to feel as since that's the conflict, we want the disease to feel as antagonistic a villain as possible. We want the reader to hate the disease and using description, so then we feel like the goodness and the plight of the main character. And I'm sure you do this since this is just an excerpt, but just something that comes to mind as I'm thinking about this type of story. So yeah, that's all that I got for you, Remy. Thanks for submitting another excerpt. Very well done. I definitely enjoyed it. Definitely recommend submitting another portion of the story in the future. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. That was awesome. I always like doing these like different types of genres. I like that we're kind of getting a different range of different fantasy protagonists today. Let me see. the we got the horror. Actually, we're kind of getting a little young adult vibe, actually, now that I think about it, where we had the horror, the young character Lyra in the horror. We had the Dreamwalker. So the Dreamwalker was a little older, or the character from the Dreamwalker story. And then we had young characters and crystals, and Desolation is another young character. So we're getting a nice little range of characters. I'm enjoying the different depths of characters we're exploring. Awesome. So the next story we're going to hop into, we're going to be hopping into story number 5, Bloodthirsty Stranger, which is an LGBTQ plus fantasy by ML Claxon. So ML, I got your story queued up. We'll be hopping into your story next. And by the way, if you are wanting weekly or monthly writing tips, subscribe to my newsletter, The Art of Writing. This is a call out. This is each edition is going to give you writing articles, writing stories, and exercises to help you improve the process. So it's a little bit more of like a deep dive to help you just like random things about the writing process. Definitely make sure you're subscribed if you want to be able to start getting the different editions of it. Absolutely free, doesn't cost. I'll drop the link down in the details. It's also down in the YouTube description down below. So definitely make sure to subscribe if you want to be if you want editions of The Art of Writing. All right, beautiful. And keep those comments coming. The comment of the day game is still active and going strong. I've definitely gotten some really great comments so far. So I'll be announcing the winners shortly. And the winner of the comment of the day game is getting added to a leaderboard that I'm currently developing, still developing. And I'll have more details eventually. So definitely keep those comments coming, my friends. All right. So let's do Bloodthirsty Strangers. I got that queued up. ML, I know I saw you in the stream. Perfect. Am I ready? Always. We're always ready. So let me pull up your story. Bloodthirsty Strangers. Okay. And perfect. All right, so I'm already on my end. I got my highlighter and I am all set. Okay. Bloodthirsty Stranger, LGBTQ plus fantasy by ML Claxon. Chapter 1. Oddly enough, my vampire transformation started at a Greyhound station, under harsh, fluorescent lights. I was standing at the ticket window, my fingertips gripping the cold metal counter, feeling a chill running down my spine. The distant hum of bus engines and the tired shuffling of other travelers faded away as I tried to figure out where to go. The ticket agent barely glanced up, impatiently tapping her fingers on the counter. Her tired and indifferent eyes scanned over me like I was just another faceless stranger in her boring routine. My heart was pounding, anxiety drumming through my chest. Swallowing hard, I mustered up the courage to speak, each word a battle against my fear. Hey, how, how, how far west does Greyhound go? I asked. It goes all the way to California. Any specific city in mind? She replied, her voice flat and uninterested. I stood there, my mind completely blank, desperately trying to recall the name of any city in California. Her eyes narrowed, and she rolled them in annoyance. Do you want a ticket to Los Angeles? She suggested, impatience seeping into her tone. As I struggled to remember anything about Los Angeles, she impatiently tapped her fingernails on the counter. How much does it cost? I blurted out, eager to end the awkward silence. After a few moments of typing, she glanced up. That will be $123. The bus leaves in an hour. Briefly, her eyes softened, maybe noticing my worn billfold and the small stack of bills I carefully counted out on the counter. Do you want me to check another destination? She offered, unexpectedly gentle. No, I'll take the ticket. And I replied, shoving my meager savings, which I'd kept hidden from my dad, back into my wallet. As she continued pounding on her keyboard, my thoughts drifted to California and the unknown future that awaited me there. Anything would be better than staying in this place. A few minutes later, the printer whirred to life, and she started stapling and stamping the tickets with mechanical precision. I watched, fascinated by her methodical movements, each step done with a practiced efficiency that felt almost like a performance. The only thing missing was a dramatic ta-da at the end. In a monotone, she listed the cities and layovers I'd encounter on my journey. Her voice became a distant drone until I heard the sharp, dismissive "next." That meant our transaction was over. Muttering a quick "thanks," I walked away from the counter towards the waiting area, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. My mind raced with thoughts of the adventures waiting for me in California, a place that promised to be anything but as dull and suffocating as this town. Clack Mountain, with its crumbling houses and empty streets, felt like a prison suffocating me. Every morning, the smell of wet dirt and rotting wood overwhelmed me, pushing me closer to the breaking point. By my 18th birthday, the peeling paint and rusty mailboxes were unbearable. Each sagging roof and boarded up store became etched in my memory, a reminder of the town's decay. Even travelers passing through couldn't escape the heavy gloom. Their smiles faded as quickly as the sun behind the constant clouds. I fled, desperate for the freedom that lay far beyond its borders, with less than 2,000 people living in the town. There was no place for someone as different as me to blend in. My home life was just as bad as the crumbling town because my father always had his eyes on me, afraid that others might discover the truth about my home life. But when I was nearby, he couldn't even stand to look at me. The only time he ever let me leave Clack Mountain was for a field trip to the state capital when I was in seventh grade. If it hadn't been mandatory, he wouldn't have let me go at all. My mother wasn't much better. She tried to keep me close to avoid my father's anger. Her efforts became even harder when she had to find work to support us. I could see the dread in her eyes every morning as she prepared for another grueling day at the hot, dusty sewing factory. Week after week, my father would drink away most of his paycheck, leaving my mother to rush home to have dinner ready for him. She never knew when he would stumble through the door after a night of drinking with his buddies at the local bar. She made sure his food was warm and tried to keep me out of his way. The rare nights when he was too drunk to bother me and went straight to bed felt like precious gifts, although I wasn't used to receiving any. At school, things weren't any better. Bill Clearfield and his gang bullied me endlessly, like the villains in a comic book. Every day, Phil delighted in making my already miserable life worse. And then he would boast about it to his dad. His dad, in turn, would share the stories at the bar, praising Phil as a great example of manhood and making fun of me as a pathetic loser. I always knew when Mr. Clearfield had talked to my father because the nightly tirade would start as soon as my dad settled in front of the TV after dinner. "Guess what I heard at the bar today?" he would yell down the hall, slurring his words. I would try to ignore him, hoping it would pass out first. But that never happened. If he didn't fall asleep the moment he got home, I knew I was in for a long night. "Hey, dumbass, did you hear me? Get your ass in here right now." As I walked into the living room, my heart raced as I calculated the fastest way to escape. I don't know. What did you hear? I would say, eyeing the door and getting ready to run before his anger exploded. Most of the time, it all started with something like, most of the time, it all started with something like, "Hmm, hey, Phil's dad said you're such a sis in PE that the guys think you should be in the girls' class." Right on cue, my dad would call for my mom, and she'd rush in. She'd try to distract him with a beer or something to eat, anything to get his attention away from being disappointed in me. But it never worked. Did you know your kid is too chicken to do PE like the other guys? William, why aren't you going to PE? My mom would ask, sounding tired and looking down. Every time this happened, my mom would have this look on her face like she was exhausted and her life had been a disappointment. I knew people in our small town used to think she was beautiful, but living with my dad had taken that away. Her nose was slightly crooked, clearly broken a few times. While I couldn't remember all their fights, I knew she had suffered more pain from him than I had. I'm not avoiding PE. I just suck at sports, I'd explain. I had to figure out how to keep my distance from my dad while making sure my mom was out of my side of the exit. It didn't work too well, and I usually ended up getting beat for being such a disappointing son. Some people might wonder why high school stressed me out so much, but if you didn't grow up in a small town, you wouldn't get it. Not now that I've been in Los Angeles for a while, I know that people from big cities don't really understand what life is like in small town America. My high school was so tiny that hiding secrets was impossible. If you asked anyone about me, they'd eagerly list off all the messed up things my family and alcoholic dad did. Being gay in a place like that only made things worse. I didn't know any other gay guys to talk to about why I felt so different. And even if I did, I'd never have the guts to do anything. I was afraid my classmates would find out the truth, and then I'd get another beating from my dad. But all that was about to change. I had made up my mind to leave this small town and never come back. Before I had a chance to think it over, a loud voice came over the loudspeaker, saying my bus was boarding and leaving in 10 minutes. I froze, holding on my backpack and ticket so tight that my sweaty palms threatened to smudge the ink. End reading. Wow, really, really great character development. First off, really great character development. Really great. Really, really great. Thanks for submitting. I don't think I've received too much predominantly LGBT themed characters or stories, but I absolutely love it. Absolutely. And I think it's absolutely a great story and a great discussion to have. So I think things that really stood out to me. I like the world that you're setting up for this, where the character is coming from our protagonist. I think it's clear that clearly he's an outcast in a very small town, probably kind of like backwards town where it's very anti-LGBT, where it's very biased. He feels very much like a loner, an outsider. Something that actually came to mind, I wondered what year this took place. I very much wondered what year this was taking place. I'm like, does this take place like today, or does this take place like 10 to 20 years ago? Yeah, just a random thought that came to mind. Just because like LGBT culture today, it has come so much farther than where it was 20, 30 years ago. So that's just one thought that comes to mind. Let's see. So I love what you're doing with the dad's character. I think you're doing a good job of setting up this kind of like hatred, this setup, this tension with that's going to push the main character to grow as a result of it. So I think that's a really good setup for it. Let's see the ticket. Yeah, I'm having fun with the characters. As I like look into it, I think the character development is actually the strongest for this. I think right now the character development is the strongest. Plot, hard to speak to the plot because we're still so early on. So the plot I can't really comment on. The structure, I think I'm good with the overall structure of it. I do like how it's structured. I think the biggest opportunity is actually going to be the world building. And we'll get into that. So let's dig into this. So I think, and so hear me out. So right now, this is it's a LGBTQ plus fantasy, right? So it's a fantasy story, and clearly it's about vampires, which is awesome. Vampire genre is so much fun. Out of this first chapter, we only hear the vampire transformation or the bit about vampires once. Oh, excellent, deleted. We only hear about the world of vampirism once in the first chapter. We don't get any sorts of references the rest of the story or the rest of this excerpt that there's any type of vampire, that this story is supernatural at all. Let me just drop it down. Let's say if this was 12-point font, this was like a normal, and this wasn't double spaced. No, that's, I think this would probably be like, this would be normal. So let's say this was this first chapter, so about 4 pages, right? So in the first 4 pages worth, the only time that we get a reference to vampires is in this first, the first sentence. If we had taken out this first sentence, I would have no clue that the story was about vampires. So this is what I recommend. And even though, like, I know we're early on in the story, clearly the story is like we get to learn about how they become a vampire and how they, what their journey is like, and that's awesome. But I think what I would recommend is I would still do, since this is being told from our narrator, I would do some very subtle references just throughout every once in a while of referencing either this supernatural world. I don't know if maybe it's just vampires or if there's more supernatural characters, but I would reference the supernatural world every once in a while. And what we want for that is we want foreshadowing, right? It's really foreshadowing at heart. Now you start doing foreshadowing a little bit once we get back to the bus station, which is great. Because you talk about their sexuality, the sweaty palms. I think you do a foreshadowing thing, but yeah, I think what I would do is I would do a little, I would throw in foreshadowing every once in a while of being like, my dad was always an asshole. And you do a moment where like, but things were going to change. If I were tackling it, I'd be like, my dad was only an asshole, but that's because he didn't know what was really out there. He meets the vampire on the bus ride. Cool. So then it's probably like the second chapter actually dives into it. Cool. That makes sense. I would still foreshadow. I would still foreshadow even then. So, because even think about like stories of, and this is just on my mind because I'm watching the show now, Interview with the Vampire. Think about how they tackle that, even on like the first chapter. That's just one vampire reference. But on a story like that, where it's set in the real world, there's still references to vampirism throughout, even though there's no actual vampires in like the narrative of the main chapter. So I would see if there's ways or if there's moments you could find to reference like supernatural, because technically you're telling the story. Technically, the present moment of the story happens, or this first chapter is basically told in the past, right? Oddly enough, my vampire transformation, right? So the present moment of the character is in the future. They're probably already a vampire, is my guess, based off this. But this whole story, this whole first chapter takes place in the past, which tells me there are vampires, witches, and where. Ooh, love it, love all those creatures. So even more so, since this is being told in the past, then there's great opportunities to just reference the supernatural world, reference like maybe a reference witches or reference werewolves, or just reference like supernatural type stuff if you want to keep that ambiguous still. But I think any moment you can find for foreshadowing of like, or even like the main character struggling with kids at school, of like, those kids always bullied me, but if only they knew what I was going to become, or if only they knew what was really out there. So like, there's so many different ways you can go about that, but that'd be my first recommendation. And there's also a moment where you play up them loving comic books. I forgot where it was at. So at school, things weren't any better. Phil Clearfield and his gang bullied me endlessly, like the villains in a comic book. This is some excellent character development right here. I love this. I actually kind of want more of this. This tells me, is our protagonist, is our hero, are they like a comic book nerd? Yeah, are they like, do they know like all like, are they big on like comic book characters, superheroes, all that? Like, I love that. I would actually recommend like, what if they made references to like comic book stuff or like comic books more often? Like the dad is like this type of like comic book character or this type of comic book. It's like reference. I'm not as familiar with comic book with the world. I'm more familiar with the cinematic universes for everything, but that just an idea to further develop their character, because like the nerd part there is awesome. This was so cool. Okay, so let's see the ticket agent. I loved what you did with the ticket agent. This initial conversation was great. The ticket agent barely glanced up, impatiently tapping her fingers on the counter. Really great use of really great use of this action to kind of show like the indifference of the moment. I would almost add like a how does it sound here? Impatiently tapping her fingers on the counter, a clicking matched her a clicking matched the pounding of the keyboard or something like that. So I would add a audio reference or a sound reference if you can. And I think you do a good job of setting up the main characters. Characters they're kind of like a very shy because they deal with a lot of bullies in their life. Who wouldn't be if you're dealing with that? And I think that's awesome. So you do a good job of setting up our character in the beginning. But then I like that she starts off as like a flat uninterested, but then she kind of gauges a little interest. And I think that's actually really well done. Really, I think that's actually really cool. So I like that the character that this keyboard this ticket person kind of has like a little like character moment, even though she's probably not really that important. And I think that's interesting. And I think, yep, I like what you did with that. And then we get exposition. We start learning about the backstory. Oh, this thing. The only thing missing was a dramatic ta-da at the end. Only use quotes if a character is actually speaking. I would just do that like that. I would either do that in uh I would do that with that dialogue or with that type of thing or do italics. So I would do one of those. Only use quotation marks if a character is actually speaking in the present moment. In a monotone. I think this would have to be in a monotone voice. In a monotone, in a monotone voice. In a monotone. I think so. But mon I think grammatically speaking, I think you have to put voice there. But I just don't know if that works or not. But that's just something that comes to mind. And then basically you describe their mountain or you describe the hometown, basically why it's the hometown is a shit show for the most part. I think the initial description of Clack Mountain, I think you could probably shorten this a little bit. Um, it's interesting to know where the character came from, but my guess is it might not be as relevant for the character journey. I want to get to the character conflicts here with the dad and the parents and because that's like the core conflict that we're dealing with right now. Yeah, you do a good job of setting up the parents dynamic, the family dynamic. Yeah, this is good. This whole like the exchange with the father is really good. It just does a really good setup for showing that tension and the hate there. Yep, this is good. This is a really great way of doing targeted homophobia. Really well done. This works. I think the only thing I don't know, the only thing I'm not sure right now about the protagonist and his relationship with his parents, it's clear the relationship with the father. That's clear. The father and the mom's relationship, that's clear with each other. I'm not sure why the protagonist doesn't try what his relationship with the mom is like. Why do, are there ever moments where he's like, "Mom, why don't you speak up?" Um, it's kind of assumed that she kind of just takes everything from the dad, that she's a pushover. But what is his relationship with his mother outside of his dad? And that I don't know. Maybe you explore that later in the book, but that's just another thought that comes to mind. Oh, and that's just so sad. Her nose was slightly crooked, clearly broken a few times. Oh, God. I like that. So I like that you go through their backstory and then you touch upon their sexuality, which like that's great because that's such a huge factor. And then we go back to the present moment of the bus station. Awesome. Well, I love that. And this is actually also another really great moment to do some more foreshadowing. Foreshadow the supernatural world in some way, shape, or form. Especially if they're about to meet. You said the vampire meet a vampire on the bus ride. This is a great moment to do some type of foreshadowing. Before I had a chance to think, a loud voice came with this loudspeaker saying my bus was boarding and leaving in 10 minutes. I froze, holding onto my backpack and ticket so that my sweaty palms threatened to smudge the ink. I glanced nervously out the window, not knowing that the dark, that not knowing the supernatural world that lay in store for me, or not knowing that my death would soon be approaching. I mean, because especially like vampires usually have to die, right? But I don't know anything about your vampires yet. But just do some type of foreshadowing um that would really draw the reader in even more, would be my recommendation. Awesome. And ML, that's all that I got for you, my friend. Thanks for submitting that. That was a cool little start to an LGBT story. I absolutely love that. Always LGBT, always a fan. Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much for submitting that. Definitely feel free to submit more excerpts of the story in the future if you're wanting feedback on different parts of it. Awesome. And with that being said, that was great. Great story. The vampire is already on the bus. Perfect. That's even more than that. You can do even more opportunity to do a foreshadowing if they're already there. That's awesome. That means that the vampire that it's probably chapter 2 is about the vampire interaction. I'm even more intrigued by it now. That's awesome. All right, perfect. So with that one out of the way, once again, if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. Daily writing streams, weekly writing stuff, interviews with published authors, stories and critiques, writing sprints, writing community, and so much more. Tap that button so that way you'll be alerted when we go live. The Story and Critique Show stream is every single Saturday at the same time at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So we'll have another Story and Critique Show next Saturday. So definitely make sure to submit those stories. The sooner you submit a story, the more likely I'm able to get through it in the queue. Now, with where we're at right now, my voice is giving out on me, so I have to call off the submissions for the day. Yeah, I just have to call off the submissions because I can feel my voice. So, but we'll continue on submissions for next weekend. Definitely make sure that if you submitted a story, I'll queue it up for next weekend. I'll let you know as we get closer. And if you want your story to be read, let's say you hopped into the stream or you're watching this on the replay, submit a story now. The sooner you submit it, the more likely I'll have the time to get through it on next weekend stream. So definitely definitely let me know. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to hop into the comment of the day game. So I'm going to be skipping my writing sprint for today because I need to be doing my writing offline for the day. But we have the comment of the day game. So for those of you who have been commenting throughout the stream, I'm going to narrow it down to a top 3 and see what were the top 3 either most clever, funny, or most helpful comments of today's stream. The winner will get added to a comment of the day leaderboard that I'm currently developing. How do we tip you with a coffee? Could you post the link? Aw, thank you so much for reminding me, my friend. So Sean's referring to where is it? So what Sean is what he's referring to. So I with my YouTube subscriber count, I'm not at a point yet where I can accept it's called super chats or the tip features through YouTube. I'll get there eventually. Same with Twitch, I'll get there eventually. In the meantime, if you get value out of like these stories, if you get value out of the readings or out of the critiques, this is a completely free experience. I'm not planning on changing that anytime soon. But if you want to show appreciation, you can always drop me a tip over at the following link, buymeacoffee.com/thecreativeghost. I dropped it in the comments, and it's also down in the YouTube description down below. This is my main job. My main writing business, my main source of income is my writing business. These live streams are a part of the social media stuff I do. This is what I do. Think about it like this. You'll go out and you'll spend $10, $5 to $20 on a cup of coffee, on some fast food, or on a meal. You could also spend $5 as a tip for me, and it will go really far as an appreciation. Only if you've gotten value, though. Only if you've gotten value out of any of these story and critique streams. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, my friends. Awesome. And thanks for the reminder again, Sean. That's awesome. Okay. So let me pull up the comments for comment of the day. Okay, there was some good there was some fun comments today. Okay, so I'm just narrowing it down right now to the top 3 comments. Yeah, we had some really great comment because we chatted about a lot of writing things. We chatted about a lot of some fan stuff was between Star Wars, Game of Thrones a little bit, Wheel of Time. We have some absolutely great references. Okay, and I think I've narrowed it down. Okay, so I've gotten it down to top ones. Okay, I've narrowed this down to top 4. And okay. Okay, so I got number 3. Okay, so number 3, I've narrowed it down. So I got the top 3. So coming in 3rd place is going to be one of our favorite references and probably one of the a very all-time well-known quote from Mike Edwards. These are not the droids you are looking for. This is one of the most well-known quotes from the Star Wars saga, and this definitely goes for the win of all-time greatest quotes for today's stream. So, Mike, you get number 3 for the winners. So, number 3 spot, and then coming in number 2 is Sean, with your great description, great descriptive writing. I just like the first paragraph could be broke down so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. I'm just as intrigued as Jared. Keep it up. That is a great mix of a critique and also positive affirmation. I am so down for that. So Sean, you get spot number 2 for the comment of the day game. Really great work. And coming in as the winner of today's comment of the day game is trouble beginning. Start writing until you find the beginning. Mary, you win spot number 1 for the day. Trouble beginning. Start writing until you find the beginning. Because that, my friends, is an absolutely great quote. Because we can't begin unless we put the pen to paper, the fingers on the keyboard, and just start writing. So really great work, my friends. Happy to have you guys here. I always love doing the comment of the day games. Now, as I'm looking towards creative writing on the morrow, make sure you tune back in for tomorrow's stream. We are having, the Create Right Now podcast. It's going to be super cool. I'm hosting the contest queen. Tomorrow's topic is how can you market your book in 2024 with the contest queen. She comes with over 20 years of experience with marketing, with contests. She has helped. She is over with her company, Words for Winning. She has helped, Caroline has helped her community win over $1 million from contests and things over time. So she has so much knowledge on marketing expertise. We're going to be doing a special workshop on how to do giveaways. So that's going to be part of it. It's going to be a little interactive. We got some great questions lined up, and you're not going to want to miss out. I will even throw up the image. I was like, make sure. Here we go. So I'll throw up the image so you can see. Beautiful. So definitely tomorrow, check out. This is the event for how you can market your book in 2024 with the Contest Queen. Join us for episode 12 of the Create Right Now podcast every Sunday to help you become a better writer. Awesome. So that's going to be on the slate for tomorrow. We will be going live 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So same old. It'll be a lot of fun. Hope to see all y'all there. Wonderful. And that's what I got for that. Perfect. Tomorrow's podcast will be a lot of fun. If you're looking for something to watch next, down in the YouTube description is the reading sprints for storytellers. It's some of the top story and critique shows, some of our previous episodes. Out of the previous 23 episodes, definitely worth a watch. If you're like, hey, I want more, I kind of want to listen to more of the stories from the community, or if you want to listen to some previous versions of some of the stories you heard today. So down in the YouTube description, definitely check out the Reading Sprints for Storytellers playlist. And don't forget, most importantly, before you go, like the stream on your way out. Tap that like button. Let us know that you got value out of this stream. Help me, help us show the YouTube, all the algorithms that writing streams are cool. Aw, I'm glad, my friends. Sean, great work. Yay, Mary for the win. Really great work, Mary. I absolutely loved your quote. Farrell, had fun. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you for dropping by, my friend. Really happy to have you back on the stream. Neil, what's up? You're catching us on the tail end, my friend. So we're just wrapping up, but I just want to say thanks for another great reading week. Aw, you're the best, my friend. Thank you. We had some great stories today. I'm almost losing my voice, so that means that it's that time of the stream. So don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kaufman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writer.